I hear and read all the time that cold calling's dead and the telephone is an old means of business. But I can tell you this, so much business is still done over the telephone. And the reason why you'll read that people will say, oh, cold calling's dead, it doesn't work anymore, this and that. You can't make money that way. You know why people say it? Is because most people are afraid to cold call because it's uncomfortable. Now here's the thing. This is where we're gonna go. I'm not even talking about cold calling specifically in this video. I think it's a bigger thing. And this is actually really, really important because I think I'll start by telling you this that because especially the younger generation, because so many people are afraid to pick up a phone and call. They're afraid to talk, ear to ear, or however you want to say it. And also too, people are afraid to do it, but it's also because you have so many people are so used to texting, email. It started with email. That was a long time ago though. But even in recent years, it's all like so many people just text. Like even as far as like dating and everything, just people text. Like that's just the culture, okay? And there's nothing wrong with it. That's okay. But my point is that if you can get comfortable using the phone, it's a huge, huge competitive advantage because I can tell you this: if you're in any type of job or a business where you can contact people by phone, and I know there's businesses and stuff where maybe it doesn't make sense. I really can't think of a business um, unless it's regulated for some reason that you can't increase your business, make more money in your job, be more efficient by using the telephone. I mean, almost any occupation you could. And people will say, like, I heard recently, it's like, well, I know someone who owns a salon, and they said, I can't make money, I can't use the telephone. That seems like a very obvious one. You pick up the phone. If your salon's like outside of a neighborhood, you get a telephone list for all the people in the neighborhood, and you give them a call, and you say, hey, you know what? First haircut's on me, free. First you know hair color is free on the house. Just come in, we'll do it for free, no charge. Bring them in, and you'd have business. Almost any business you can make more money over the phone. And here's the bigger thing is because see because even if people I want to say people are afraid to cold call and afraid to make calls, and that is true. But even if you go a step further and say, okay, people aren't, they're just accustomed to texting. Okay, I guess it doesn't matter why they're not doing it. So if you're in business, chances are good your competitors are not calling the customers. They might be emailing them, they might be texting them, they might be doing everything online. And a lot of pushback too would be, well, customers don't want to be called. They want to be they want to transact by email. They don't want to be bugged in this and that. Well, I can tell you a couple things. Number one, if you're truly bugging someone by calling them, then either they're not the right customer for you, or the business doesn't fit for that type of customers. Because I can tell you this: if you called your parents to say hi and just to chat with them, would that be bugging them? If you called your best friend, would that be bugging them? No. Even if you and your best friend talk by text mostly, or maybe you guys go out to lunch here and there, but you picked up the phone and you called your best friend, would that be bugging them? No, it's not bugging them. So if it's something that someone truly wants, and are there customers or prospects that don't want to talk on the phone? Sure. But here's the thing: number one, either they won't take your call, or B, then you communicate with them a different way. But I can tell you this. Here's the thing. You know, sometimes people will say, oh, I'm trying to think of an example of this. I can't. But for example, with phones, it still works. It still works. It works. I mean, like $1 zillion of business every year is transacted over the phone. And and one thing you got to understand too, especially for I want to say younger people watching the video, but this is for anybody. You have to understand that there's what you want to call like the elite, or I don't want to call the elite, but like the people who are like not the highest level, but people who are making money and people who are transacting business and people who are making moves and they're doing things. they don't want you to do what they're doing. They don't want the extra competition, right? That's it's as simple as that. And I always scratch my head because I'm like, I look at it like, how many millions and billions can one person want? And you might say, oh, if I can have 20 billion, I want 25 billion. I guess that's where people differ, because I'm like, I can't get my head around like that. You got to keep just pushing everyone else out of the way after you have enough money for 15 lifetimes. But that's for another video, right? But my point is that there's a whole class of people that don't want you doing what works, that's doing what's going to compete with them. Because let me give you an example. We're going to wrap it up on this. If I tend to think that there's bigger forces at play that pushes everything to text, everything to email, everything to online, because see, it takes everyone away from each other, right? And you can make people make a case that and I don't think this is even a secret. I think this is kind of known, is that like when you take politicians, and I don't want to make this a political video by any means, but it makes a point. Politicians will take and they'll divide groups up. They'll say, well, this group should be against this group, and the reason why they do that is because, number one, then people are fighting each other, and they're not focused on the corruption of government and what the government's really truly doing, right? So that's a different story. So my point is this: is that if you take like the biggest businesses and the people making the most money, they don't want people coming up to be talking to people, to having true relationships. Like, can you have a relationship with someone over text? Yeah, it's not the same as talking to them on the phone. And talking on the phone is definitely not the same as meeting someone face to face. So, for example, if you have a customer that's a local customer and you have lunch with them every so often, or you go to their office and maybe drop them off their stuff, whatever, or you go to their office for their service, or go to their home to whether you're washing their cars or picking up their laundry, whatever you're doing. If you have that face-to-face relationship, that's on a different level. That creates like a very, very tight bond. On the flip side, if you hear that, that's my dog upstairs. But if you and my dog last year died, and it was very, very sad. I talked about it in one of the other videos, but my dog I had for a very long time, and she was 10 and she died, and it was horrible. It was just heartbreaking, and just I always said, because I always loved animals, but I was never like, I didn't grow up with dogs and stuff. Like, I didn't get one until I was older, and I have kids and a wife and everything, and they wanted a dog, right? So I always thought that people were crazy, like when people would say like, oh, my dog's like, part of my family, and if someone, their dog died or something, they were real upset. I'm like, yeah, it's a dog though, right? And then I get a dog, and then my dog died. I feel like my world fell apart, right? But that's a different story, and it's a year later. It still makes me sad. But yeah, we got a new dog, and well, my wife and the kids wanted a new dog, so we got a new dog. But anyways, so if you have a relationship that's maybe someone out of state or out of town, and you talk on the phone, you still create a very strong relationship, right? Now, if you take that phone relationship and you talk by text or email, yes, you still have a relationship, you still have a rapport, but it's not the same, and it's going to be easily broken. So when you look at these big companies, they want everyone communicating on the weakest level to communicate, because then you don't have those strong bonds, and customers can easily take it from you. If you're only communicating through text with somebody, then another competitor can come and swoop them off very easily, and you say, well, everything's done online. Right. But your company's not Amazon. Your company's not, and my company's not Amazon, and we're not Apple, and we're not Walmart. We're not these companies these behemoths that don't have to communicate with people personally. We're smaller companies, smaller individuals. Whether it's your job, and when I say smaller, your smaller could be $1 million a year, but That's small. That's a penny. That's peanuts compared to what Walmart and Amazon and all those other guys are doing, and Apple and Intel. You name it. Uh, that's so small that that's not even anything to them. So that my point is that if you're competing against Amazon, you're competing against Walmart, you're competing against a service, any type of service company, pick up the phone and talk to someone. Pick up the phone and call a prospect. Pick up the damn phone. I'm telling you, it's stronger than people will let on to be, and only you can make that decision if that's something that you're comfortable with. But I would say if you want to move forward, you should get comfortable doing that.